I wanted to just take this opportunity to talk about the instructions since I think we're almost done. So I'll start with you, Mr. Nolen. Any comments on my proposed instructions?
I believe I mentioned corporally.
Oh, and actually, I'm sorry, I wanted to tell you a couple of things I changed. I apologize. Could you just give each of them Dick, yes. Give Mr. Nolen and Mr. Groff.
Your Honor, a number of occasions, I basically have brought up this business of Dr. Addis and Davenport's statements pursuant to the court order.
Hold on 1 second. Just wanted to point out what you just got are a couple of pages from the instructions that I gave you at lunchtime. They have a little bit of highlighting. Those are things that I've added pursuant to your submission, Mr. Nolen, to address a couple of the issues that you had raised. So I just wanted to flag that for both of you, and you can comment on that when we go through it.
That's good. I don't see the other requested changes that I asked you.
Right, they're not all in there. I just wanted to let you know which ones I had made.
Okay.
So now you can go ahead.
Pursuant to the order concerning the two witnesses that 5 letters, one of which is stipulated between myself and Mr. Groff, and Dr. Addis gave 4 letters.
Okay.
And then Davenport's affidavit for whatever it's worth.
So if you give me copies of all of those things, so
I think
have
Mr.
them.
Groff has them.
I think you have copies too.
I don't.
Dr. Addis sent them to everyone, didn't he?
But I didn't get it. And I mentioned, I even called the court repeatedly. I had a problem opening PDF documents that this court has sent in. I think it's because my software isn't up to snuff with you guys.
Hard to believe anybody's are worse than ours, but that's possible. Okay. Do you know what he's referring to? I know we all looked at them earlier, but I don't remember.
I know what he's referring to, Your Honor. I don't know that I have them.
Okay. Let me see.
I have them in.
Well, let's talk about Judge Davenport first. We agreed her affidavit could go in, so if you have a copy that you would like to put into evidence in May.
I can't print it because of the corruption or whatever, the compatibility issue.
That was something that was submitted in paper earlier, right? Excuse me. Judge Davenport's affidavit was filed with you and the court before.
Correct.
Not sent by email, so you do have that, and I think she probably has it for you. So I can't take the one that's our official copy out of my file to use as an exhibit.
Then can we just make a copy of it? It's only a 1 page.
We can if we need to, but it's really your responsibility, so see if you have your copy. But as I said earlier, I will tell the jury that that is an exhibit that will go to the jury room. You don't disagree, do you, Mr. Groff?
I do not.
Okay.
As the judge Davenport
One
said.
affidavit of Judge. We'll go to, we just need to, I guess, mark it as an exhibit so that it's formally in the record once you find it. Now, with regard to the other letters, I think we discussed, if I remember right, at some point earlier in this trial, that at a pretrial conference, Mr. Groff agreed to one letter from Dr. Addis going into evidence. I don't know which one that is. Do you have a copy of that one?
I do.
Okay.
Well, I have not yet been able to find it
Right.
here. I did not intentionally bring it for that purpose.
Let me just see if I have copies. I don't actually recall.
Let me just,
Yeah.
and Judge, the one that I agreed to admit is not one of the 4 that were sent to us by Judge Davenport.
Yes, it was.
So I don't have it. You're right. So if anyone can find the one that you both agree to, that too can be marked as an exhibit. With regard to the other letters, I believe Mr. Groff objected that there was no evidence that corrections had received it. I think I said, Mr. Nolen, that you were welcome to ask the corrections people if they recognized them and had seen them, but you didn't ask them about that. With regard to the additional letters provided by Dr. Addis's office to all of us,
Yeah.
I said that although Mr. Groff had not stipulated to those coming in, you were welcome to question the corrections office witnesses about those, and they might come into evidence, but you did not do that. So those other
Well, wait
letters
a
will
second.
not come into evidence.
He basically gave me them, so he knows that corrections officials,
Okay. Let me just explain something. The fact that things are produced in discovery does not mean they're admissible in evidence. To get them into evidence, they have to meet the rules of evidence in my green book here, including having somebody on the stand identify them and explain where they came from. It doesn't matter that they came from their files. You
well,
need a witness in court.
then I go back to the DeFord situation. You know, there are documents that he produced. In other words,
It doesn't matter. You need a witness. I mean, he could stipulate to it on that basis, but he doesn't have to.
What I was
Parties
reading-
don't have to stipulate. That's what
the
witnesses
the
are.
witness basically stated, like as an example, the corrections memos, or what do you call it?
Case notes, I believe.
Case notes. I don't even know, I assume those were admitted.
They were.
And I also assume the other stuff that I talked to each of the corrections officers,
Okay. You did not ask them anything about the letters from Dr. Addis's office. That's my point. You could have. They might have gotten into evidence that way, but you did not.
But again, the first witness basically wasn't even there during
Okay, Mr. Nolan, I don't want to argue about it. I'm just saying
another appealable issue.
you
Okay, no
have
problem.
not established a basis for those to come into evidence. So if you could find the one that Mr. Brown
Here's
stipulated
the
to.
four, come on, Karen. We'll continue looking, but
All right.
there's the four.
Okay, but the four are the ones that are not coming in.
Yeah, I believe.
It's the other one.
I've got something that's.
Okay, let him see. Let him see.
Yeah,
I think this might be it.
All right, let Mr. Groff look at it.
It wasn't signed by him, but I think that was,
no, it was dated December of 2011.
All right.
November,
This is not even from
February.
for years.
Okay, let's move on. If you find it later, we can certainly submit it later. Have you found the affidavit from Judge Davenport?
No.
All right. Let's see if I have a copy. All right, I will have a copy made of that affidavit. If you could take this down, it's got the big sticker on it. Just for affidavit. It's the big tag, okay? And I guess,
This one right here.
yes, why don't you make 3 copies, so I can give one to each party as well.
I will, and I'll do it now.
Thank you. So that takes care of those.
Yeah, the four,
Matters.
those are the four right there, that corner of the desk.
Those are the 4 that are not going into evidence.
These are the four that basically, for the stipulation.
No. Mr. Groff stipulated to 1. That's what I was saying earlier. We got several from Dr. Addis's office, but Mr. Groff had only agreed that the one that he agreed had gone to corrections. Was it corrections? Am I remembering that right?
Yes.
He would agree to that one because there was no question they got it. So that one will go in if you can find it. The others, we have no evidence that they went to the corrections department. They're not directed to them. It says to whom it may concern. So there's no evidence they went there. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So just going over the written submission that you made earlier, Mr. Nolan.
Yep.
Your item number 4, I added, you'll see some highlighted language to the proposed instruction, which addresses your issue about treating all witnesses equally. Hopefully that is satisfactory. I think that covers your paragraph 5 as well. I don't know what you mean by paragraph 6, but exhibits that are not already in evidence through a witness or stipulated to, I can't put in independently.
Well, again, I was under the impression, maybe missing that whatever Mr. Groff was producing from corrections would be admitted.
Okay, well, that was incorrect.
And again, I want on the record that because Mr. Forge and Marcus Coxon, two witnesses that basically were subpoenaed in the case of Coxon, that basically going to the prejudice, when you get to that point that we discussed in the contempt proceedings, that basically, that goes to my damages that I sustained with Coxon, that his testimony, and that he and his wife basically both together spoke to corrections officials.
Okay.
And again, we're basically,
Mr. Nolen, I can't make Dr. Cox appear today.
but
There's nothing we can do about
That
that.
one has been put in, she said.
this one,
I believe that's the one that was given probation.
Okay, well, I can let Mr. Groff look at that here.
This one I think is in evidence. Yeah, but this is not a Dr. Adas letter.
I understand, those are the Dr. A's letters there.
All right, let's move on, folks.
Yes.
I don't think we're gonna get anywhere. So, I guess, Mr. Nolen, I'll just let you tell me if there's anything else that you want me to do in terms of my instructions.
As I started to say, I think the various standards, through those two books. These are,
And Lori, while they're doing that, you can mark this as whatever that
we've got basically the two books that all through this trial have basically been mentioned. The 2010 ADA standards for accessible design and the actual regulations. I do believe that the jurors are going to be confused in terms of what the standards were. There's been multiple statements, and when I asked Your Honor before we started, issues of law, I would assume regulations would fall into that. So I deliberately didn't want to have them read the standards into the record. I thought that was the judge's responsibility.
So what are you asking me to do?
On each of the disability rights reports and the VCIL data, there are references to standards. And I don't know whether your instruction that you've got in there in terms of questions on law, in terms of sending jury notes, would also include the standards or the regulations.
Okay. If what you're asking is, I'm not sure what you're asking.
I'm saying there are issues in terms of
What do you want me to do? I need you to tell me what you're asking.
on each of the standards that basically are mentioned in these reports.
Okay, those are how many pages? I mean, I can't just.
I mean,
read
we're only
that.
talking about maybe 10 or 12 standards.
Okay. If there are specific things that you want me to
The
give them
disability
copies
rights
of-
report, heading, as it has the heading of what it is, right under it says standard, pursuant to standard 505, whatever.
If you have, there are two things we can do here. One is, I put in my draft instructions, the only thing that either of you gave me any information about, which was the parking. So I was specific about that. I had no idea what other specific things you were saying had been violated. If you have specific language you want me to add on page 9, in addition to the parking requirements, or the, you know, the accessibility and so forth requirements there, we can talk about that. If you have specific pages from those documents that you think are directly relevant, you can ask me if we can submit copies of those pages, and I'll see what Mr. Groff has to say.
You're-
But just giving them those entire books is not going to help.
Well,
them.
I'm saying particular standards are physically mentioned.
Okay, which ones? What pages of those documents?
I mean, the disability rights report. please. Okay. This is disability rights.
Okay.
It
This is,
says standard.
let me just stop. I think this is taking a lot longer than I was thinking it would. So how about if we finish up with the witness so he doesn't have to stick around, and then we'll let the jury go downstairs again, and then we'll have this conversation. All right? Sound good?
I suppose so.
All right, let's bring the jury back up and get the witness back in.
Mr. Brock, what did you do with that piece of paper?
Yes.
Those certified copies?
Yeah, I'm not having time to review it. I don't think it's relevant.
Thank you. You're all set. So folks, just for your information, we marked Judge Davenport's affidavit as Exhibit 27, and it is admitted. And you can actually put that in your folder, Lori. Can I also just...
Can we somehow read that or tell the jurors in advance what it is other than just picking the exhibits and they suddenly find
If you want to read it to them in your closing, you may, because it's now in evidence. Also, can we clarify one thing with the witness? And you can bring the witness back on the stand. I believe that you two stipulated to the admission of several documents that never got marked nor identified by number. So 20 he talked about, and that one is admitted, but I need clarification on which other ones you've agreed to come in. So where are the other ones, 21 through whatever? Anybody here? You can just take a seat, sir. Yeah, sorry. Actually, you can't ask me a private question, I'm sorry. But you can have a seat, and if you'd like to ask in front of everyone, you may.
Sure. I'll give you an opportunity.
All right.
Do you have one there? Okay, hold on.
You may be seated.
So, Mr. Goff, could you just clarify what numbers were the other exhibits that you agreed to? Because that wasn't stated earlier, just so we're clear. And then Lori can mark them as admitted.
21, 22. So 21 through 26.
Okay, so those will all be admitted. And ladies and gentlemen, before I forget, while we were on the break, the parties agreed that another document will be admitted as an exhibit, which means you'll be able to look at it in the jury room, which is an affidavit from the administrative judge for the trial courts named Judge Amy Davenport. So that is an affidavit that you will have in the exhibits, and the parties may refer to it in their closing arguments.
Your Honor,
And now?
before you go on to the next document, can I have some sort of instruction that both sides are stipulating to the majority of the items there that as far as the Attorney General and the state is concerned, there's truth to the items, but there are some items in that
No, there's no stipulation except that the exhibit is coming into evidence. You
Okay.
can make whatever arguments you want to in your closing. So let's continue with this witness, Mr. Ray.
You mentioned, I asked you about the inspection after the items were done. Do you have any idea if there was any other agency other than DGS that was basically involved in either inspections over the pavilion building and its subsequent parking lot that you testified to, as well as the barracks? That, in other words, another state agency or say local municipality was involved?
In that project per se?
or the one in Barry?
Or generally speaking?
Or generally speaking too?
Generally speaking, I believe Agency of Transportation has resident engineers, inspectors on site while a project is going on. Forests and Parks, I do not know if they have full-time inspectors. We have them on we have full-time inspectors on many of our projects, but we do not have them full-time on all of them. Sometimes only part-time inspectors. On a very small project where they only have to go in and verify certain things, they might show up a couple hours a day or a couple times a week. But most of our larger projects, we do have full-time inspectors. AOT, as I said, I know that they do have inspectors, usually resident engineers or something like that.
What about at the municipal level, say in Barry for the courthouse or here in Montpelier? With the city, in those cases, they're both cities, not towns. Would the city inspectors also be involved in checking things?
Some of the cities are a little different. I know, for instance, Burlington has their own inspection department. They will come in periodically. We also have labor and industry that will come in at certain times to verify things, to give us clearance for electricians, electrical work, plumbing work, before certain things are buried or hidden. But their involvement is usually, periodically during the project and at the end for substantial completion, a certificate of occupancy. But it's really up to the owner to provide the inspection services.
Well, what about other state agencies other than the ones you mentioned? Do you think of any others?
I'm sorry.
Other than you mentioned transportation, parks, and whatever, would there be any other agency basically is a state agency that would specifically be involved with the fire and building safety code and accessibility rules?
No, we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. David Saggy who does go around periodically to some of our existing buildings and helps us significantly to identify areas where, from an ADA standpoint, we have some deficiencies or corrections, rest areas. He will visit periodically and tell us, even though you are in compliance, it could be better, and we have done that.
Do you know if he took over either of those two buildings?
No.
What about the Department of Public Safety?
They, as I said, the marshals, the fire marshals, assistant fire marshals, they typically will get involved. Very seldom do they go through a project other than when the plumber or the electrician has asked for a clearance on rough plumbing, rough electrical work. If we invite them to come on because of a certain issue, they may appear. They will appear at the end of a project before a certificate of occupancy is issued by the fire marshals. But we do not rely on them to inspect work.
What would you say if I told you that the Commissioner of Public Safety, and I'm going to read from page 3 of this document that I'm going to use for impeachment purposes.
Objection.
Sustained unless it's in evidence.
I'd like to offer this as in evidence, and specifically,
What is it?
it is a cooperative inspection agreement between the state of Vermont and the city of Barry, reference to Barry Courthouse.
Hold on. Are you familiar with the document?
I showed it to him more.
You showed it to me. I have seen it. I would not say I'm familiar with it.
Okay.
I
So
object.
I think first you have to see if the witness is even familiar with it before I can even consider whether it might be admissible. Put a sticker on.
I don't have any more.
We have some more, I'm sure. And Lori, if you would staple it also, please.
Each separate page there is certified, Your Honor.
Okay, but the
And
question is
I'm
whether,
saying, do you want, for clarification, separate exhibits or the whole thing as an exhibit?
it's fine as one.
Okay.
I think the question is whether you have ever seen that document before.
I-
If they're
I-
separate, then I guess you need to look at each page and tell us.
Yeah, I have not seen this document.
Just check all the pages.
Recently signed, May 6th, 2014.
No, that's a certification. You're referencing,
Yeah, I have not.
go to the,
Okay,
go to the,
Mr. Nolan, just let him finish, please. Don't both talk at once. So have you seen any of that?
I have not seen it.
All right. So you can't do much more with that with him.
say that again?
He's not familiar with the exhibit, so you cannot offer it as an exhibit through this witness.
Okay, can I testify in rebuttal or whatever?
I suppose you can later, once
Okay.
you're done with him. And we have about 9 minutes left.
I don't think I have any further questions.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Ray, could you clarify when you entered your current position?
Yes, I mentioned while I was sitting outside, I was reflecting on various commissioners I've had, and I realized I became director when Commissioner Wallace was in place. And Jerry Myers was commissioner at the time that this project was ongoing. So I was director while Commissioner Myers was here. So I was incorrect in saying I was chief of construction. That was under Commissioner Tasha Wallace. So I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
And,
Hold on, that was it?
Yes.
Okay.
and,
Something to respond to that?
and basically for clarification, so during the entire time that Myers was in office, during your present job?
Somewhat. We had 3 directors at the time. We only have 2 now. I am in the east, and we have another director.
So both of these buildings are in the east?
Yes, they were. I was over this area. Yes.
No further questions?
Okay, you're free to go. Thank you very much for coming. Don't forget your fancy signs,
Oh,
or we'll keep them by default. All right, any other witnesses from the
Yes,
stage?
Mike.
And Mr. Nolen, do you want to simply testify in rebuttal?
Yes.
Okay, so you are still under oath, and you can go right ahead.
From the outset, I basically thought that the city of Barry and the city of Montpelier would have some kind of input, for lack of a better word, on ensuring compliance. Since 2011, up until 2 days ago, when basically I confronted the city of Barry, I had gone to the city of Barry and I had complained about all the stuff we're testifying in terms of accessibility issues. I also went to the Department of Public Safety, and the Department of Public Safety said, like this witness just said, fire and safety issues. And I said, what about accessibility, ADA issues? And they basically told me, it's not us, it's Barry. Barry would say, it's not us, it's the state. In other words, typical bureaucracy, finger pointing.
Okay, sustained, hold on. I'm going to ask the jury to disregard the comment about what people in Barry said, what other people said, other than the state. It's all hearsay, and you can't consider it. Go ahead.
I then, on May 6th, paid $60 for the documents I'm holding in my hand. That basically is a cooperative inspection agreement between the state of Vermont and the city of Barry. I couldn't get the one from Montpelier. But it states in this,
It's not in evidence yet, Mr. Nolan.
may I offer?
You want to take a look at it, Mr.
We
Brown?
already looked at it.
He said he got to only glance at it, basically, so let him take a minute to look at it.
point me to a
Yeah.
particular section.
Yeah. Well, I'll say anything,
Just point to it and show.
and then, see that?
Well, no, I can't see it. Can I, may I look at that?
Yeah, and then basically, what's the main portion right there?
Is the question whether I agree with the mission?
That is the question.
No, Your Honor, sorry, I do not, I think it's irrelevant, I don't see that's any.
Okay, so I think you folks need to come up and you need to explain
Why it's relevant.